The teaching and learning process can be defined as a transformation process of knowledge from teachers to students. It's a complex and dynamic exchange of information, knowledge, and skills between you, the educator, and your learners, your students. This process involves various stages and elements. We think of the two main parts of this process as instruction, or the part where you present the information, and assessment, or the piece where the learners show you what they know. This can mean you're providing direct instruction. You demonstrate how something works, you teach, you show. There are other ways to describe instruction and teaching. Could be that you provide them with an experience. You could be modeling a skill or exposing them to a new topic. Instruction involves various teaching methods, tools, and techniques to make the material accessible and engaging. The assessment part occurs when students show you what they know. They could be demonstrating a skill or even taking a test. We could even throw in some other critical thinking skills that can fall under this umbrella, like if you ask students to summarize or conclude or devise a plan, for example. These are all examples of assessing. We all know, though, that the process doesn't just involve these two parts. Like, students don't just watch you demonstrate how to play a song on your instrument or watch a video on healthy decision making and then suddenly they can successfully complete an assessment. There's a huge part in the middle between these two steps that's critical to the learning process. We're going to call it practice in general, but just like instruction and assessment, there are different ways to describe it. When we say practice, there are a lot of different activities that are occurring in your classroom that fall into this category. Anytime that students are reinforcing their new learning, they're reflecting, they're connecting, they're memorizing, these are all examples of practicing. We know too that these parts overlap. To ensure that all students are actively involved during their instruction and they're not passive recipients, students need high rates of opportunities to participate, time to practice their skills, and receive feedback. And we also know that assessing doesn't just occur at the end, it happens throughout the learning. For this reason, we're making a Venn diagram, and we're going to make practice the largest piece in the center. We would argue that practice is the most crucial piece. It's how students develop skills, provides the opportunity to identify and correct mistakes. It's a chance for them to problem solve. Practice supports long-term learning and skill transfer, and it even helps them develop soft skills like building confidence. Last month you learned about what active learning is and why you'd use it, and we loved reading through your posts, especially how you would explain active learning to a peer. Your descriptions were like such a perfect explanation for why the practice piece in the teaching and learning process is so important. Here are some of our favorite descriptions. Active learning puts the power of learning in control of the students instead of like forcing learning from the instructor's point of view. And it's learning through participation instead of just sit and get. This is great. It's taking the learning and then using it to make meaning and create something. Active learning is learning by doing. This one was so important. Where every student is engaged in the process. Active learning is when kids are more in charge of their own thinking, when they're asking questions or solving problems, and this was great, creating an artifact to show their understanding. Is another example of where practice can overlap with assessment. So many great examples of active learning. We kept reading over and over again your responses where you would use verbs like creating, constructing, and performing. These are all incredible ways to make learning sticky and make that practice piece more meaningful. Also great was the inclusion of collaboration in your descriptions of active learning. We understand that there are tons of examples of active learning. Some provide opportunities for higher order thinking skills, like making sense out of the information you've given them by processing the information, making connections, and then some of these activities utilize lower order thinking skills, like recalling information in a review game in Kahoot. There is a place in the practice part of your teaching for both of these types of activities. Both are needed to have a successful learning experience. We know, though, that ultimately, for learning to stick and for students to have a greater understanding of the material, which P.S., that's what we all want, right? We want our kids to remember how laws get passed and how to make healthy decisions for their well-being when they become adult members of our society, not just so that they can pass the test on Friday and forget what they've learned. So anyway, we know that for the greatest, stickiest learning to take place, more of that active learning that is happening during the practice phase needs to involve higher order thinking skills. Kids need to be creating, evaluating, and processing what they've just learned for that transformation process of knowledge from you to your students to have the most success.